You're listening to Taste for Truth Weight Loss Encouragement. I'm your host, Barb Raveling. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have all of you here today. And I am excited. We're doing something we have never done in this podcast before. And I am interviewing three people at once, a mom and two daughters. And I actually met them in Maine. This is Suanne, Emily, and Elizabeth. I met them when we had a rotation in Maine. We had lunch together. We got together outside of the apartment we were living in. We had this little backyard garden area. We all brought our little sack lunches and we visited together. So that's how I met them. They just contacted me because they'd read my books. And then I think, was it Elizabeth maybe contacted me recently, or maybe Emily? Was it Emily? I can't remember. Okay, Emily contacted me and said they've had some success in breaking free from the control of food and wondering if we'd like to do a group interview. And I was so thankful that they volunteered for that. And I thought, let's give it a try and see how it goes. So welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so why don't you each begin, introduce yourself, maybe where you're living, just tell us just a short bit about yourselves. Let's begin with Suanne, so she's the mom.
Yeah, I'm the mom. I'm 73 and I live in Maine. And I'm retired. I have two beautiful daughters that you're going to hear from, three grandchildren, a great granddaughter, and my husband and I are celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary this year.
Wow, that's great. Okay, who's the oldest, Emily or Elizabeth?
Emily's the oldest.
Okay, go ahead, Emily.
All right, I am almost 46. I'm single and never married. And I'm an ex-teacher currently in career transition. And I spent 9 years living in Cambodia, teaching in an international private school there, a Christian school, which was amazing. And that's it. I'm good.
Okay, that's great. How about you, Elizabeth?
Sure. I'm also an ex-teacher, but I have had a different career, full-time job for a couple of years now. I do work full-time. I have a very flexible schedule, though. I can work in the office and I can work at home. So that's nice to have. I have been married for almost 22 years. And I have three children and well, no, she's not a great grandbaby for me. She's my grandchild. That one's mine. So, and she's newly born, less than 2 months.
That's great.
And I also live in Maine, the same state as my mom.
Okie dokie. And so when I saw these guys, Emily was visiting that summer when I was there. Mm-hmm. So okay, so you guys have all recently had some victories. So tell me just a little bit about the weight loss and your victory that you have been experiencing lately. Go ahead, Suanne.
I've been a lifelong Weight Watcher. I was a lifetime member and I yo-yoed back and forth. And it wasn't working for me. It was a great program, but it wasn't for me. And starting in June, when Emily came up last summer, she introduced me to No Sugar, No Flour. And I went on that and I was amazed that for me, it took away food chatter and things became very different. And so I've lost 60 pounds and I've been able to maintain my weight since the first of the year. And I've never maintained my weight for more than a day. That's what I say before this. So
wow, that's amazing.
And I will say the difference is before it was always for a season that I was in a weight loss season or I was in a weight gain season. And now I'm just living life and it's very different. Mm-hmm.
Good. That's good. We'll have to talk a little bit more about that. Okay. So how about you, Emily?
Yeah, I've also been a yo-yo dieter I've done so many different things. I've done No Sugar, No Flour before and Weight Watchers, all sorts, and an Oprah diet that I don't even remember the name of. Yeah, so I started on a path for like major change in my life, like starting about a year ago, like just making all sorts of decisions like for me. And so, in I don't even know, maybe March, I started praying very hard for lifelong boundaries. Like, God, I'm like, whatever comes next, it has to be the forever boundaries that I can do anywhere in the world because I've lived other places in the world. Like, and it has to be that. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And I listened to your podcast where you interviewed Christy McCammon from Life Unbinged, and her peace and joy and just contentment with life were overflowing. And I listened to it over and over and then signed up for coaching and small groups. And so since that was the end of May, I've lost like 50 pounds and healthy weight and feeling really healthy now. And yeah, very like, I can do this like forever. And renewing my mind was a huge part of that. I didn't include that in that, but it was giant. Part of the change in seeking lifelong boundaries was renewing my mind before I found them. So like, yeah.
Okay, that's great. How about you, Elizabeth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a similar story. I have the same boundaries as my mom and my sister, and a very similar history with just a lot of yo-yo dieting, lose weight, you gain it back. I tried to maintain my weight by obsessively exercising, which is probably why I was able to probably keep a lower weight than my mom and my sister through most of my life. But it wasn't healthy. And when I lost the majority of my weight, it was because of obsessively exercising, which was not sustainable. And then Emily is the one who usually brings us things. She finds all things new and introduces it to the family. And we're like, wow. And Taste for Truth was just life-changing. Life-changing. Yes. I picked up that book. I did the study and I did it again and again and again. And it wasn't always, a straight journey towards victory. It was times of trying and times of giving up and going back to it because God was still working on me. It was definitely a progression. So it's been a lot about replacing lies with the truth, a lot about bringing my emotions to God and now Emily brought up peace. Living in peace. And just knowing that I can turn to God with anything and renew my mind and not having to feel like I have to exercise every day because I'm not overeating and I don't have that obsession anymore. I haven't lost as much as my mom and my sister. I've lost maybe like 15, 18 pounds. But it's that for me, that is the victory. And I am at a weight that I am happy with and something that I can sustain and maintain. I could probably lose another 5 pounds or so, not too much. But it's just the victory is there. Yeah.
That's great. Well, the interesting thing about having a mom and 2 daughters is that, you guys were all living in the house at one point. And so often, I remember me as a mom, I passed things on to my kids, beliefs I had about food, habits I had that they picked up. So I'd be curious to see, what habits did you all share in common when you were younger or beliefs that caused you to start struggling with food? And you can just, whoever wants to go can go.
Well, I was a binger, no question. I had a wicked sweet tooth. I hid food, and my guess is my girls aren't far behind me. What do you say, ladies?
Well, I found some of your hidden food.
But yes, I think that's true. And I think that we learned that food was a coping mechanism, that you could turn to it, not just when you were feeling bad, but also when you were feeling good, also to celebrate, also when you were bored. And you could, you name it, food was the go-to. And I think that that's just what we not only just grew up with, and I don't blame my mom for this, but we weren't taught any different. None of us had any models. And in my mom's own history, I don't think she had any models to follow after either for healthy eating and healthy relationship with food. So we learned that very early, that you go to food for everything.
Yep.
Yeah. So which is basically how it was, when I was raising my kids too, until I wrote Freedom from Emotional Eating. That was probably when I started realizing, oh, dear me, I'm passing on my habits to my kids and my beliefs, because I was the same way, eating for fun, for excitement, for boredom, for emotional reasons. And it's not surprising you guys all have that, because, I'm sure 80% of the people listening are like, oh, I do that too. It's just our culture does that, right? So was there anything else besides that you guys can think of? How about like on holidays? On holidays, Were you allowed to eat like all the Easter candy or?
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
a short period of time when we were rationed on Halloween candy. I will say we were rationed to 2 pieces a day. And then Emily, if you don't mind me tattling, I know that Emily found my stashed candy once and enjoyed that. But I think other than that time, it was a free for all. Yeah, holidays, you could eat as much as you wanted.
Yeah. Elizabeth and I both have birthdays coming up, and I don't know about her, but all I can think about is how am I going to survive my birthday without cheesecake? It's literally going through my head. My birthday is this coming weekend. Birthday celebrations, you're allowed to pick the meal and the dinner and the dessert and the breakfast. It was all you. You could have whatever you wanted. Yeah, and Easter was an extravaganza of chocolates and and hard-boiled eggs. They were mixed.
Yeah,
they were there.
Every once in a while you throw in a hard-boiled egg. And I remember the monitoring the 2 candy thing. That usually lasts for like a day until all the kids are complaining and asking a million times. And then we get so tired of them asking, we're like, all right, just eat it all. Is that how it was, Suanne? Do you remember?
Yes.
Okay, so being raised like that, what you grew up learning is it's a holiday. I should be able to eat as much as I want. Or it's a holiday. Of course, I should eat as much as I want. Or I'm bored. Eating is a good way to handle boredom. So you learn those beliefs. You don't teach them. I'm sure, Suanne, you never sat them down and gave them lessons teaching them those things, right?
No.
But they pick it up. They pick it up from us. Okay, so the holidays, how about like when you made cookies? Did you get to eat as much cookie dough as you wanted when you made cookies?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they didn't always end up as cookies either.
Right. And we did that for my kids until I realized the error of my ways. And then at the end, I'd say, okay, we're all going to wait. We're going to save our little cookie dough ball. We're going to make it right now. And after we have the last cookies in the oven, that's when we're going to eat it. So it's like, if I had started training my kids that way from the beginning, we can, as parents, if you guys are listening, you can train your kids with such good habits if you're kind of intentional about them. But if I think about the ways I struggle with eating, the different areas, they're all things that did start in childhood. So let's look at some of the have you guys thought of any other habits you learned besides that? The cooking, the holidays, the emotional eating, anything else you can remember? That's probably
Not really.
Yeah. Okay. How about when you were giving, like say you made brownies, did you eat them all at once pretty much?
No baked cookies on snow days.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No baked cookies on snow days. That's good. And when we had the ice cream carton, we didn't like the ice cream round cartons because we wanted to divide it evenly. So we got the rectangulars and we had a butcher knife and we cut it into 6 equal pieces. And we all just ate that much. So yes, they would have learned if there's a sweets in the house, of course you should eat them. That's what they would have learned from me. Okay. So as you're breaking free, now, were you guys all truth journaling? Did you all do like some Bible studies for foundation? What did you do on the renewing of the mind front as you're breaking free? I know, Elizabeth, you already talked about how you did the Taste for Truth study. I don't know if you have more to add. Any truth journaling?
Yes. Truth journaling was a big part. I do a lot of things. I use the I Deserve a Donut app and those questions and the book. I have the book too. Those questions are so helpful. I do those a lot. I've done the freedom from emotional eating and your newer one, the say goodbye to emotional eating. All of those are just so helpful. I feel like they have given me the tools to break free. Whereas maybe in the past, I've done some other Christian-based studies about mindset towards eating or mindset towards being healthy and fit, but they never really gave me any practical tools. And these were practical tools that really helped me to break free. So all of those things I've been doing, and I even set a reminder on my phone because I really need to renew my mind in the afternoon. So I set a reminder that will go off, and it's like, okay, I got to go renew my mind because I know it's good for me. Sometimes I don't want to, but I know that I need it. So I usually do it at least at minimum twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon.
Oh, that's good. And how do you decide in the afternoon or morning what you're going to do to renew your mind?
It's completely about how I'm feeling. I assess what my emotions are, or if I'm worried about something, stressed about something, or if there's something going on in the day or went on before. That's what guides me. And I look for something specific to address whatever I'm feeling or whatever is going on in my life at that time.
Okay, so a lot of times you might renew about the situation rather than food. So if you're
Yes.
worried, you'll do the worry questions or renew about whatever you're worried about. Which do you find that when you do that, the emotion of worry goes away?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it definitely reframes my mind to have more of God's perspective, or even just a more rational perspective than the one going through my brain. And it definitely helps. I definitely walk away feeling more at peace. And usually whatever I'm worrying about or whatever emotion I was feeling has completely changed.
That's good. So at 3 o'clock, what if it rings? How do you keep yourself from just ignoring it?
Yep, I have ignored it in the past. And it's definitely uh, I really have to remind, it's almost a renewing of your mind for renewing your mind. And I know you've talked about that before,
Right.
but I have to remind myself how important it is and how key it is. And sometimes I'm around other people and the alarm will go off. Like if my husband's around, and he'll be like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "It's to renew my mind." And then I feel obligated to go renew my mind because other people have noticed. So that accountability, I personally don't have a lot of accountability, and I think my mom and my sister have more than I do. But yeah, sometimes I do have to force myself to go do it and remind myself that it's really important and that I need it.
Okay, good.
And I will say, I will throw in there, you talked about the food. Yes, sometimes I do need to renew my mind because there's something I'm craving. Usually I'm craving it though for a different reason. Usually it's because I have some emotion I need to deal with, or there's something I'm worried about that's coming up with. So that's why I talk mostly about that, because I find that my cravings are not just cravings for food. There's something else going on that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so how about you, Emily? Let's talk about your journey. Now, did you do any renewing when you were breaking free? Because you lost like 60 pounds, did you say right around
Yeah.
there? Okay. Did
Yeah.
you need to do any renewing, or were the boundaries enough for you?
So I had to do a lot of renewing even to get to the boundaries. I'll be honest about that, because I think it takes a level of like submission to God to accept boundaries from him. And so I was actually renewing my mind like several months before I came across these boundaries and like signed up for the program. And I would like I was blessed enough to have the same planning period every day at work. So, and it was very long. So in the middle of it, I had cause work was always a stressor. I would have an alarm that went off. And if I couldn't come up with an emotion, like if I was having a really good day and there wasn't anything there, I would just pick something. Like from a list, I would just pick a random one and do it. And that was actually really good. And I would actually just have a separate journal that I kept at work, like right tucked into my like desk. So I had like a work renewing the mind journal, and then I had one that like I had at home. So, and I was also renewing my mind like before the day started. And then once the boundaries started, I will say the boundaries do like clear the brain like more than other boundaries that I've had, because I don't have to guess at any of the food that I'm going to eat because it's all planned. And so I do say goodbye to emotional eating. I just go through the list like one by one. So it's like whatever comes next. So if there's nothing, again, like Elizabeth said, if there's something going on that day, then I will I'll truth journal about that. Or I actually really love option charts a lot too. I really enjoy those. I've learned how to write them myself now. It took a little bit of doing, but I can come up with my own now that like for my own situations. And I really like them because I like how absurd like the thing that you actually want is. just seeing it so clearly, like what isn't an option and what you just sort of dream would happen. Like, and I love it. Just like, oh my gosh, I'm so ridiculous. Like, and how obvious like God's choice is for the things that matter to him. Like if those are if you want the peace and joy, the relationship with God, like there really is, there's one way to it, and the other ways really just aren't as good. So I love option charts too. So, yeah. So now I just kind of truth journal when I need to, before my day starts. And I do have a lot of accountability too. And so sometimes like if truth journaling doesn't settle things, because it doesn't always, sometimes I still like crave the thing even when I'm done. Most of the time it'll be great. Like 90% of the time I'd say it's great, and sometimes not. So then I would like be like, ladies, I'm facing this, like help. And then they'll truth journal for me. Like they'll send me responses. And
is that
really
to your mom?
that.
You do that for your mom and your sister?
I have done it with you, Mom. I don't think I've done it with Elizabeth, but the Life Unbinged has a group called Surrender Sisters. And so you can use that to do it. So, and I also have an accountability partner from that, not just like the group. So I kind of have a bunch of people that I would like reach out to for it. And I'm happy. That's been a game changer for me. The accountability this is the first time I've ever done it, I think, with full accountability. And it's a huge, huge deal, bringing things in the dark out into the light, like things that you really, really don't want to truth journal about because you really, really, really want to eat that thing. It's easier for me to send a message to people than it is to like sit down and truth journal. Like if I can't make myself do it.
Okay. So it sounds like you kind of do the same thing your sister does, where you have a certain time in the afternoon you do it. And I have noticed, I've talked to other people, and I don't know if I've mentioned this in the podcast before, but a lot of times people who give up sugar and flour, they don't have cravings because that's, you don't usually get a craving for carrots. So if you cut sugar and flour out of your diet, which of course not everybody does, I don't. I allow sugar and flour in my diet, that you won't have as many cravings. But what this other person pointed out is that if you don't renew your mind, even if you're not having the craving, you're not going to mature, because renewing and seeing things from a biblical perspective, accepting what we need to accept, laying down our lives, choosing God first, that's what's going to mature us. So it's good to have that scheduled time so that even if you aren't craving, you have that time. Plus, I love how you guys are both working through life things and not just food things, because it's those life things that are really going to mature us. The food things will help us follow our boundaries and stop the cravings, but the life things, they'll also help with that, but they also mature us to love God and others well, and excel at our jobs or our vocations or whatever we're doing. That's good. Okay. How about you, Suanne? What's your renewing journey been?
I'm probably the more inconsistent of the three of us. I have done renewing of mind, but never consistently like they have, although I have notebooks filled with them. I too love your last book. I really did not want to go no sugar, no flour. I did it to appease Emily while she was home, so we'd only have one set of meals that we were making. And then she was going to leave, and I made a chart of pros and cons. And it was like, oh, this is ridiculous. And it went on and on and on about why I shouldn't do it. And then on the other side was peace of mind and a relationship with God. And it was like, okay, that's it. It's over. And so that was the determining factor. And for me, the peace of mind, now I don't renew my mind about food, but like my daughters, I renew my mind about everything else. And it's like I have gotten, God has allowed me to now see other areas where I can grow and mature. And so food is over on the side now. You got to watch it. You never take your eye off it. It's like the ocean. You never turn your back on the ocean. You never turn your back on your food issues, but I can concentrate on other things now. And I do use those kinds of tools, but I journal in the morning. I write my prayers to God, and that's when my time comes. So it is consistently every morning.
Okay. So I guess here's the question I would have. So a lot of times when people are doing really strict boundaries, something will happen. They'll go on a trip, they'll have a holiday, they'll have their little sugar, and all of a sudden it's a 3-month break. And I don't know. What would you do if that happens? I mean, Elizabeth, you're renewing your mind so much twice a day. I think that will probably carry you. And you already have something in place, Emily, once a day. So you've already have that established. And Suanne, you're doing some. But the question is, what happens? Because a lot of people would say, oh, we don't want to do all or nothing. And I guess I don't really want to get into a discussion about the boundaries. So we won't do that.
Right.
You guys, everybody's listening to this knows I'm in favor of all boundaries as long as we have some sort of boundaries. So this isn't a podcast to push certain boundaries. But I would say, what plan will be in place in case something happens one day where you have the sugar and flour and you go back into craving mode? Because it hasn't been years for you guys without sugar.
You tell someone immediately.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's not just like an alcoholic. You tell somebody you have a drink immediately. Okay. And then what's the second step?
Once I tell somebody, then I'm usually in a position where I'm ready to truth journal about it if I haven't already, because now I have somebody that I have to report back to. So
that's good.
So I will usually truth journal and make sure I follow up with them and like tell them how the day ended. And even if I haven't done any failure eating, I definitely do failure eating questions. Those are the go-to for that situation. You do it right away and as often as you think about food. Like, don't think that one time of failure eating questions after you've touched something quote unquote forbidden, will do it, because it doesn't for me. And it can creep up on you. Like the next day might be okay, but then the day after that, like sometimes is bad. So you just have to be hyper alert. Another thing that I've done is I have sent my meal plan to people. It's another form of accountability, but like, here's what I'm going to eat. And then I report sometimes each meal if I have to, like back. So I guess I utilize truth journaling with accountability is probably how it works for me.
That sounds super wise. And I would say the option charts, see, I've talked about those in my new book, Say Goodbye to Emotional Eating, and also in Freedom from Emotional Eating, right? Yeah, those two places. And I also have some resources on my website under the Renewing Tools section. You can find that. But you know what I think could be helpful too? You know, I know you're talking about your birthday already, Emily, where you're little like, oh no, my cheesecake. You could do an option chart every day until your birthday.
Right.
I don't know if you've already been doing that. Renew ahead of time, like a few days in advance every day, so that when your birthday comes around, it's like you don't even want it. But have you tried that?
I have tried that. For big events, we have a vacation coming up. So doing that for like vacations is a big deal. Even though we're all going together, I think there still could be like temptation. It's a total blessing that we're doing it together. But I've done it for holidays, my birthday, events that I know that are coming. Teacher Appreciation Week, no joke, that is a disaster of a week. Like, there's food everywhere because somehow that's the only way to reward teachers. Or the best way, I should say.
Oh, yeah, I would think that'd be hard. It's all there. Sometimes it's unexpected. Like sometimes when you get unexpected something coming to your office or house, that's the hardest. But of course, you're expecting it if it's Teachers Appreciation Week. Okay, so if anybody's listening to this, don't give your teacher chocolate or candy unless you know your teacher loves and wants chocolate and candy for Teacher Appreciation Week.
We appreciate parents, though.
Okay, let's just go through some quick lies and truth. I'm going to think of some lies you guys all believed growing up, and you guys could each give me a truth to it and see how this goes. I'm just going to think of them off the top of my head. Okay, I deserve a treat. Or let's just say it's a holiday. Of course, I will have as much to eat as possible. Who wants to start with the truth for that?
I don't need to have as much as I want, because if that's not what I'm going to remember, I'm going to remember the time. I never remember what I ate. I only remember the people I was with and what we were doing and the laughter and the tears. So the food really isn't important beyond that day, and it's not that important.
Okay, good. Anybody have a different one they want to share?
Yeah, I would go, I'm always in the recovery route. So I'm like, if I do this, first of all, I'm going to feel ashamed about the day and I'm not going to remember it as good. I'm going to remember it as yucky and another day that I failed, quote unquote. Yeah, I failed. I'm not a failure, but I failed.
Right.
Like I would remember it that way. And so I wouldn't enjoy the holiday as much. And then the next day I'd be exhausted. I'd miss all the shopping that we do after. And then I'd miss out on future things too, not just like that day, because I'd be tired, I'd be exhausted, I'd be ashamed. I'd have to spend a lot of time truth journaling about it. And it would be harder to get back onto my boundaries. And my boundaries feel so good. Like it's just easier not to do it than it is to give in and try to get back on.
That's interesting. So what you focus on is you see the consequences clearly, and the consequences so bad it makes you not want to. This is interesting. Years and years and years ago, I don't even know how many years ago, I was attracted to somebody else while I'm married. I mean, anybody who's been married for a long time, that's probably going to happen to them. I've been married for over 40 years. And all I need to do is imagine the consequences. If that attraction went any farther, I listed all the attractions. And every time I did that, I only had to do it a few times. It was like so appalling and terrible that I lost every single last bit of attraction. And so I think that works for anything that we're tempted to do that God doesn't want us to do. There's going to be lots of consequences that will make us lose all our desire for it. Do you have anything different to add to that one, Elizabeth?
I really think mine would be similar. It would be that I can enjoy the holiday within my boundaries and will enjoy it more within my boundaries because I won't wake up regretting what I did the day before.
Okay, that's great. And if you guys are doing these lies and truths, try and write them down, because as you write them down, you're going to sink the truth way further into your brain than just saying them out loud. Writing them down is what really cements them. Okay, let's think of what other ones. How about I'm bored. Food would be a great thing to eat. And maybe just tell me if it's any different. Maybe it's going to be just like what you said last time, but if it's any different, tell me about that.
This is one I have to tell myself all the time. And usually what I go to is food is not a solution. I often tell my kids when, oh, you have to get off video games or it's time to stop watching the TV. And then they turn to me for entertainment. And I say, I am not your entertainment. I do play with them. I do a lot of activities with them, but sometimes I have other things to do. So it's kind of like that food is not my entertainment.
That's good. Okay. Any other ones?
I think of what do I have to do to feel good about where I am today, tomorrow, if that makes sense. That's sort of like the consequence one. And I do that with lots of things in my life. I'm a procrastinator too. And so, well, what could I accomplish today? Or how could I stay within my boundaries so that I feel good about myself tomorrow? Because I'm suffering right now.
Good. So what does future Suanne wish that present Suanne would do? Kind of goes along with that too. Okay, how about you, Emily?
I would probably do the question. So I find why am I bored? Do I have something else? Am I bored because I'm procrastinating? Because then it becomes like a different thing, because that is often the case. Or am I bored because I'm tired? I feel like boredom, there's an underlying thing, because I feel like I can always find something to do. And so I think that might be why I'm a little hesitant to just straight up answer this one.
No, I think that's really good to bring up, because I think boredom is different in that way. And a lot of times if you think, if you're bored and it's like 1:00 in the afternoon, think to yourself, okay, how many hours until we eat again? 5:00. Let's say I eat at 5. How am I going to use the next 4 hours? And actually plan it out, because the more time we have on our hands, the easier it is to waste time on the internet, on our phones, to watch TV, to eat, to do all these things that, God doesn't really want us to. I mean, not that they're evil in and of themselves or wrong, but too much of them, and it's pretty easy to get to too much of them, is not going to help us become more mature Christians. It's not going to help us love others better. So
Right.
I like that. The emphasis,
Mhm.
that's good.
Mhm.
Okay, so we talked about holidays, we talked about excitement and boredom eating. And so I took a little break just now and I asked them if there's one other one we should bring up. And they brought up one that we haven't even talked about yet. And that's kind of like perfectionism eating. And that's actually one I haven't struggled with in this way, where they say, I have this project to do. It has to be perfect. And so actually, I just realized I do struggle with that. I guess I sometimes feel like my writing has to be perfect, but you know what? Probably I don't eat for it. But anyway, so you think I have to eat something so that I have whatever, the energy or the pizzazz or the get up and go to do this perfectly. So they all are shaking their heads, nodding their heads, saying, yes, we struggle with that one. So what would you guys put for the truth for that one?
Well, I would say, for me, like my go-to in those situations is always something sweet that I can like grab and eat like a lot of. And that actually just makes me tired. And then I can't actually work up to my like ability level anymore. Like my brain actually like gets kind of foggy and it actually depletes my energy and my focus. And then all I want to do is eat more of the food and then I don't do the project as well. It's like this horrible vicious cycle. So yeah, so that's one. And then the other one is just like I really need to renew my mind about living up to expectations because like is it as important as I think it is? Is it as important to God as I think it is? And so chances are good. It's like I'm making something way bigger than God is making it. And I can really cut it back if I take the time to truth journal about it and spend time with him before I even start it. And so like eating this treat because I think it's going to take me like 5 hours to complete it versus like truth journaling. And then like I find out, oh, it might actually only be like 45 minutes because God just made a mountain out of a molehill. It's worth that truth journaling time. So,
oh yeah, good, right? Because the problem with perfectionism, a lot of the time we go into obsession mode and we spend way more time doing something than we really need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how about you, Elizabeth? Any
Yeah,
truths
I
you put to
agree.
that?
I would definitely go do some questions first. I would do the living up to people's expectations questions, although it's often living up to my own expectations. And I would do the worry questions. Those ones I would go to. But I think what this really comes down to, in addition to perfectionism, is doing difficult things that is hard for many people. And so to me, the truth would be like, I can do hard things. You know, that mantra that a lot of people say, I can do hard things and I can do things with Jesus. I would bring it to him and, you know, ask for some strength to do this, give me some wisdom in this task. But really kind of recognizing my own ability in this situation.
Okay.
And the truth is, it doesn't have to be perfect. That really is the truth. We expect a lot of ourselves, especially in my family here. We expect a lot of ourselves and think that everything has to look just so. And the truth is that it doesn't. It really doesn't. And that other people accept my flaws and Jesus accepts my flaws and I need to accept my flaws.
Good. That's good. How about you, Suanne?
Well, what immediately came to mind is if I start eating, I'm going to make this a huge problem, and it's a smaller problem. And one of the first questions I go to is, where is the evidence for this? And then I will start truth journaling. And once you go through your questions, in particular, Barb, I find that like my anxiety level starts to drop, and my focus goes from me to God. And that's what's supposed to be happening. So I need to stop being so self-absorbed, stop thinking this is just a huge problem. And well, I don't want to say a dope slap, but I need to be significantly moved off track and thinking I know what's going on, and back to the kinds of questions and seeing the truth and journaling that way.
Right. See, going back to biblical perspective, you know, if you're walking with Jesus, my burden is light. I mean, it's our burden that we put on ourselves to be perfect, whereas his burden is light. We just need to walk with him, just, do it the best we can. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I think the perfectionism questions could also help. And also in the Renewing the Mind project, a lot of those starting a habit questions, there's fear of failure. I think I might even have ones like obsession or something like that. And that's starting a habit, working on a goal. I can't remember what they are, but you could definitely find some of those if you struggle with this in that book as well. Okay, so I think we've gone through some lies and truths. I guess one last question. How has this whole journey changed your walk with God? We'll end with that question because I know this is a way longer podcast than we normally go. So why don't you just end with that question?
I'll start. I think by the time I really accepted that I needed to make this change and began to seriously work with it, it was because I realized that I had a stronghold that was really negatively impacting my relationship with God. And by surrendering, and it was a huge surrender, all of this to Him, He has opened up the floodgates for me, and I'm discovering other areas that need to be worked on, but I'm just so thankful that He's exposing these to me and giving me more and more opportunities to just grow and grow closer. I've never been closer to Him, thanks to where I am now.
That's great.
I agree. Never been closer. I have always loved quiet times and like reading the Bible and just the intimacy of like contemplative sort of practices. And I since I surrendered this like fully, I have never gotten more out of scripture than I do now. Like never in my whole life. Like I see things that I'm like, how did I miss this for 20 years? Like, I don't get it. Like, and it's just so like alive. And I trust God more. I feel like this was an area I was always resentful about. Like, God, why couldn't you take this away from me? You must not be the God who gives good gifts. Like, and how, like, just always thinking like I wasn't going to get good gifts from God because He didn't give me this one. Mm-hmm. And so like surrendering that, like released that opinion of God and allowed like the God of love to like really just like flush over me. And so, I'm just so much more like open to Him and what He's doing, even in hard things. Like a career transition is really not easy at all. Right. And I keep like going through like these times when I'm like, I like don't trust for a minute. And then I'm like, hold up, look at what He just did. Like, how in the world is He not going to continue to give me good gifts as I seek after Him? It's sort of like, the answer to decades of prayer, and just being able to release that resentment and see God in a whole different light. So
that's great. Yeah. So what truth did you need to believe, do you think, what was releasing the resentment? Was it just, accepting what you need to accept, or did you also have to have a truth?
I let's see. I really needed to accept the reality of the situation, that like it wasn't God who was letting me down. It was me. Like, like God was still working, and I guess, yeah. So, Philippians 1:6 is probably something I've always held on to, that He who began a good work in me will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. And I would say that I believed that before He did this, but I didn't believe it. And now I know He does it. Like, there's no question in my mind. And I think that's one of the ways that scripture has come alive too, is I can see God finishing things. And even though we're in this like already not yet position, like He still finishes and does beautiful things here, and it'll be even greater like when we die. So I think it was that acceptance of the reality that God wasn't ever letting me down, and and that and then seeing I wish I could have believed it before, but I guess I needed to see it.
Well,
and
you
God
believe it.
allowed that to happen. So yeah.
You believe it as you experience it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I would say too with that, he who began a good work and you will complete it. I do think
Mhm.
with sanctification, especially, but also with like letting go of our idols when we have new trials, new idols, new struggles come up, that it's a partnership. He doesn't come in and wave his magic wand. I actually have a lesson about this in my new Bible study, Philippians, which I think Elizabeth, you were doing some beta reading on, so you read it. But
Mhm.
anyway, he doesn't wave his magic wand and change us in a flash. So the work, he who began a good work in me will complete it. I do think he kind of completes it more quickly, the more often we go to him to get his perspective and renew our mind. A lot of times we're the ones slowing up the process. And the more we keep coming back to him throughout the day, the sooner we'll be able to let go of those idols, those weaknesses, those things that are, making us unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Elizabeth? How has this affected your walk with God?
Everything that my mom and my sister said, absolutely. Knowing him better, getting closer to him, and just experiencing his unfailing love, and his transformative power. I too thought this was something I would just never arrive. And I really don't think I have arrived, and I don't think I will arrive until we are gone from this earth. There will be no perfection. But that he sticks with me. This has been such a long journey. Decades of a journey. And I can see his transformative power year after year, changing how I think little by little by little, and changing how I act just, 1 centimeter sometimes at a time. And he just keeps working. He just keeps working and taking me deeper and deeper with him. And, thinking about Emily and what she said about resentfulness, I really was contemplating this the other day, that I'm almost there to the point where I can say, I'm thankful that I had this problem. I'm thankful because if I had not struggled with something, not that I haven't struggled with anything, but I struggled with something that was so big for me, I would not know him this well. I would not have this relationship. And for that, I am eternally grateful. I would not trade having had this issue, for like not being able to know him. So that's huge. That's really huge to go from a place of tears and crying and, just thinking you're never going to get over this, to a place where I can say, thank you, God. Like, thank you, God, for giving me this trial so that I may know you better.
Yeah, that's right. And you guys, you can't see us, of course, as you're listening to this interview, but we're all nodding our heads. Somebody said something, we're all nodding our heads because we've all had this experience. And I think so. Every one of us, have you all been in a position where you thought you'd never get over the eating thing?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
Yes.
all 4 of us have been in that position. Do you guys feel like you're over it now?
I do.
Okay. So Suanne feels like she's over it. How about you, Emily?
I will continue to follow these boundaries, but I can't promise it's going to be perfect.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, especially since you guys are, feel like you have to live up to expectations. I shouldn't even ask you that question since you're on a podcast.
No.
So we all know that we feel something, but that doesn't mean it can't come up again. But I guess, go ahead. Well, let's see what
the tools.
You have the tools. Okay.
I have all the tools. And so I will not go back to a place where I just give up everything. It's just not worth it. I have the people, I have the renewing the mind. I have an eating plan that I know is good for me. I know how to do it forever. Like, I have all the tools, and my mind is focused on, this is the path. This is the only path. This is the path Jesus has for me, and it is good. So I think that's where I say, like, I'll mess up. I know I will.
Okay. So you might not feel like you're over it, but you feel like you have the tools to keep you going.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, good.
And I would add to that, I feel I'm in a place of victory. I agree. I'm not going to be perfect. I don't expect to not slip at some point in time, but as Emily said, I can get back on, but I'm in a place of victory, a place of peace and freedom that I never thought I would get to.
Okay, good. And so I was where you guys are at, back in maybe 2007, 2006. I can't remember how long it was there, but I was in a place of victory. And I was a little worried that I would go back to my old ways. I was worried I'd gain my weight back, but I knew that I had the tools. If I got it off with truth journaling, and that's what helped me have victory, I can go back to doing that all the time if I need to. So I felt like, even though I wasn't sure I was, long lasting victorious, I knew I could be long lasting victorious because for the first time in my life, I knew how to get it off and keep it off. Because before it was just willpower, and that would only work every 30th time or so. So good. So we would encourage, I'm sure all of us would encourage you guys who are listening to try and find accountability, to have your primary boundaries. It doesn't have to be the same boundaries as these guys. Elizabeth, Suanne, Emily have one type of boundaries. I have a different type of boundaries. I have the 3 meals a day and 1 snack, but have boundaries and then renew your mind enough that you can follow them. Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like the 4 of us where you don't naturally have self-control of food. And so if we don't naturally have self-control with food, we have to walk with the Spirit and renew our minds. So he gives us the gift of self-control as we walk with him, and the truth sets us free. It's not the boundaries that set us free. The truth sets us free, right?
Yes. Amen.
But the boundaries are important. Okay. Well, I hope you guys have found this helpful. And I thought it was really fun to get together with the 3 of you again, and also just, to do something we've never done before. So thank you, all 3 of you, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I hope you have a good week. I hope this podcast has encouraged you to get that old journal out again, start renewing your mind again. And I just believe God will change you. It could take hundreds of truth journal entries, but you will experience victory. Just renew your mind every time you feel like breaking your boundaries. It's going to kick in. Do it in writing. It's worth the effort, right? Would you all say it was worth the effort of all those renewing entries?
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All of us say it's worth the effort. Okay. Okay, everybody. Thanks for joining in. Good to have all of you here. And I hope you have a good week following God, following your boundaries. I will talk to you next time.